What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you an early preview of Mouse P.I For Hire, an upcoming boomer shooter, basically, that is actually doing some really interesting stuff. I have wanted to play and cover this game pretty much since it was announced, as far as I'm aware. However, in participating in this early preview, I have come to the conclusion that this game is substantially more than I had initially understood it to be. And we'll get into that over the course of this video, but I do need to inform you just in very plain terms here at the beginning. I am able to bring you this preview because I was offered access to it via the game's publisher. They've had a little early preview thing going on because what some people may or may not remember, I suppose, is that this game was initially supposed to release right about now, here in a few days. However, that got pushed because they were right on top of the same release date as Crimson Desert, and I imagine they wanted to get out of the way. But in any event, I would say probably the most important stuff to know about this game realistically is the stuff you will have already seen on screen up until this point: the rubber hose style animation, the silly cartoon-inspired noir art style that is clearly also a play on, I believe it was Steamboat Willie, that entered the public domain not all that long ago. Speaking of that animation style, however, I was also happy to see that you do have some options and customizable options at that in terms of exactly how this looks. You can go for a more, let's say, crisp and clean style to it. You can also choose to blur some of it out or add different filter effects and customize a little in terms of what you actually see here. Next up, let's talk setup for this game. So this game sees you playing as a mouse, in particular one Jack Pepper, a war hero turned PI in this particular universe, and it is through that PI work that you are on the trail of a basic missing persons case, and apparently that spirals into a much bigger web of intrigue, corruption, and all the usual stuff you would expect from a sort of noir-style game, even with the silly cartoon slapped on top of it. In order to get to the bottom of all of that, we're going to have to smash our way through a bunch of different levels, cartoony combat, utilizing items and the environment to your advantage. But what surprised me perhaps the most is that you are more or less free to run around and explore as you please, because while the game is sort of divided up into levels, you actually get into your car and drive around and choose where to go all on your own. Now, I will say the car driving in particular is actually done from a sort of top-down perspective on what is effectively a world map of the city you find yourself in, Mouseburg. And that exploration will also apparently be coupled to like Metroidvania style stuff in terms of movement unlocks, which is a decent time to talk about progression. So this early preview had roughly half of the ultimately, I believe like a dozen or so weapons that you'll have available upon release. And most of those were pretty basic in what you would expect. Your, basic gun, automatic gun, and then a shotgun, as well as the de-varnisher. That one was pretty funny. It removes the ink from the characters you are fighting and sort of acid baths them to death, alongside things like dynamite and stuff. Those weapons also have an upgrade system. You are going to find blueprints around. You can find secrets in the various levels and places you'll be exploring. One of those rewards can be collectibles or blueprints, things like that. You can bring blueprints back to a store at your home base. That allows you to then upgrade your weapons and make them more useful overall. And then while I didn't experience this personally because it wasn't in the preview section, again, there are supposed to be like unlockable movement abilities. I know there's a grappling hook in there, you can double jump, all sorts of stuff like that. There's also usable consumables. And so when I go to actually review this game in full, one question I'm definitely going to have is just how much of that stuff is there? Is it like impactful and changes how you approach individual situations, that type of thing, because I think there's a lot of potential there for this to be more than, again, people would expect, including myself. But then there's the exploration of those levels and the combat therein. So as a boomer shooter, if you're familiar with those at all, you'll more or less know what to expect here. That is to say, shoot everything that moves and try not to die. That is made a bit more difficult in terms of like the mini bosses and boss fights you'll have that have more varied mechanics that are, as you would imagine, more difficult to avoid. Like for instance, the main sort of boss you fight as the end of this preview will show you. She'll summon in like bombs and things like that you can then blow up near her or in proximity to her in order to cause more damage, as an example. And so there are some mechanics like that, and I will say that the feel of all of this is mostly pretty good, though I did find it a little hard to get a bead on exact enemy placement at times, which saw me taking more damage than I would have liked. But you can find potions and medicine cabinets, that kind of thing, just laying around everywhere, which is a good place to restore your health in between the game's various save checkpoints. Now you need to find a typewriter to initiate a save, but what I suppose might surprise some people is that there are actually some environmental interactions, some of which you would expect, like the ever-present explosive barrel naturally. However, you can also do things like blow up certain walls, things like that. Not all of them, mind you. I did just find myself interacting with, again, various environmental stuff here and there that surprised me, I guess, given the nature of the game's animation and things. Just stuff that I wouldn't have expected them to do with levels, which was nice. And so I guess when you start putting all of that together, more than anything, this preview surprised me in a way that has me looking forward to this game even more now. On top of everything I've mentioned up to this point, they've already dropped the price for it as well. It will be $30 US when it releases on April 16th. And I know for me, at the very least, this game is going to serve as a nice and proper little break from all of the bigger RPGs I will have played. In any event, though, having seen everything going on in the background of this video, I would imagine that you more or less get the gist of what this game is going to be, and I would love to hear if anybody is as interested in checking it out as I am, which is as good a time as any to let me know how you feel about it down in the comment section below, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.